All right, folks, it is another episode of Remodelers on the Rise with your host, Kyle Hunt. I have a multi-time guest, Paul McManus with McManus Kitchen and Bath down in, what do we call it? The elbow of Florida, Tallahassee. Is
Yeah,
that what we called it?
yeah, sure. Where's Redneck Riviera is another good
A
term for this
redneck
area.
Riviera. I had joined Bailey and Paul were in this little program we use, and I had joined in, and I heard him say the elbow, and I said, "You sure it's not the armpit? The armpit of Florida?" And he said that was not kind to the redneck Riviera. It's a lovely area down there.
It is.
Wonderful. Paul, I appreciate you being a guest again on the show, and I'll set up the show in a second. Why don't you just introduce yourself? A little bit of, hey, here's who I am, and here's kind of the business I run. I got X number of employees, and just a little bit of a taste of who you are, and then I'll do the setup of the topic that we're going to dig into.
Sure. I own McManus Kitchen and Bath. We're a design, build, remodeling company in Florida. We've been in business since 2015 with sort of this model, this design build model. 6 staff plus myself. We do roughly $3 million a year in revenue, doing 30, 35 projects, something like that.
Awesome. And what's something we don't know about you, or what's a hobby that you like so that people can get to know you?
A hobby that I like other than work? Ugh, that's a tough one.
Because you do love, you look at work as just fun. But yeah,
like the work-life balance thing doesn't make sense to me because I actually enjoy the stuff that I do. So,
but if I were to push you and say, what's one thing outside of business?
I used to really be an avid cyclist, and that's something that I've been, and I stopped doing it. I ran these bicycle tours for 4, 5, 6 years, these international tours, and I got really burned out on cycling. And then so I stopped doing it. But I've been thinking lately about getting back into that.
Ooh,
that's a good hobby. And I've actually, an old cycling buddy of mine just hired us to do his kitchen. And that's sort of, chatting with him kind of bubbled it. He's like, man, we miss you. When are you going to come back out? And I'm like,
So he bubbled it, and then I just bubbled it up. I feel like it might be a little New Year's resolution for you.
Maybe, man. Maybe. We'll see.
You're not sold on it yet, but
I'm not a huge resolution guy either.
All right. You were probably sold on it before I tied it in with a New Year's resolution. Now you're like, I want nothing to do with that.
Once it becomes a mandate, I'm less likely.
Yeah, exactly. Paul is the MVP, the most valuable person in the Remodelers community group. I don't know what you win for that, but maybe someday you'll get something, an award of some sort.
I like that as an honorary title. That's nice.
Bailey, keep that in mind, Bailey. We might need to give our MVP something. But the reason I say that is we've got Remodelers Community. If you're listening to this and you're not part of that, remodelerscommunity.com. It's a free Facebook group, and Paul and myself and probably 1,800 of our closest friends are very active on their good content, good advice, encouraging, motivating. And Paul chimes in a lot with, hey, I've got a template for that. Hey, here's my thoughts on that. And he did this about a month or so ago on a post. Matt Stevenson, hey, Matt, True North up in Pennsylvania. Matt wrote, I'm trying to severely improve my project scheduling. Does anybody have some examples scheduling? I know that every project, every trade is different. I'm looking for a good template to start with. Great question. Got some good replies. And when Paul replied, I kind of said, ooh, there's the making of a great podcast, because instead of kind of going into just, try this software, this or that, Paul started unpacking just some of the maybe unsexy aspects of scheduling that is really what makes things work well. So we're going to talk about project scheduling. So if I just opened it up to you, Paul, and said, all right, topic, project scheduling, something that remodelers are always needing to be working on, something that's frustrating to remodelers. What's kind of your hot take when you think of project scheduling, as far as, why is it hard? Why is it so important? And then we'll kind of get into some of the best practices that you employ.
Gotcha. So the question is, why is it important?
Why is it so important, Paul?
Well, money. I mean, I think money is kind of there's 2 reasons: money and client satisfaction, I would say, arguably. Clients want to, if you don't finish on time, obviously the clients are less happy, but the longer the project takes, the more it costs. So that's a big one as well, and just to fit, I tell my staff this quite a bit. There's only so many days in a year. And so we have that many days to earn however much money we can earn. When a project runs long, that's less days to earn money because you don't get paid more when that project runs long. Arguably, there's a change order maybe. So yeah, those are the two big reasons.
Gotcha. Then when we think
sanity is probably another good one.
yeah,
knowing when things are going to happen and they actually happen when they're supposed to keeps me sane.
yeah. If I'm a McManus, if I'm doing a kitchen with you guys, am I on the homeowner side? Do I have a kind of a end date goal that you're putting out there? Obviously not a resolution because we know how you feel about resolutions. But do you have a goal that you give them?
No, I mean, yes and no. So we have a detailed calendar built, and that has a substantial completion date on it before they sign their final contract. But there is no promise. We don't make a delivery date promise. If we did, I would add a month to the schedule and make that. You know what I mean? We would cushion that a lot because things do happen. When I say we're good at scheduling, we are good at scheduling. That doesn't mean on April 17th our project's going to finish because I said it April 17th. We are often a week over, sometimes a couple of days before, but we're never a month over, 2 months. Some of the horror stories you hear is that's our goal. And that's what we tell our clients. It's on or about. It's never this date.
I like that. And then, the money aspect of scheduling, it's if I'm running over on labor hours for demo, that I can calculate really easily. I estimated 50 hours. It took me 70. I know what my cost is there. When we talk about the money impact of scheduling, it's a little harder to really quantify. But the bottom line and the reminder for us there is if I have a project that should have taken 2 months and it takes 3 months, it is costing us more money and it is recouping less of our overhead. It's distracting us from other projects. It's not allowing us to dig into new projects. There's just multiple ways that it kind of eats into the money side of things. So again, the longer projects last, it is just hurting cash flow and our ability to produce top line revenue and gross profit.
Yeah.
Right on. Cool. So go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It is thousands of dollars, potentially a day, but at least a week.
Yeah.
For most remodelers, it's $5,000 a week or so in overhead costs and other, opportunity costs that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like you said, it's not visceral.
Yeah.
You don't feel it. So a lot of times guys are like, oh, I made out okay on that job. Yeah. But they're not, if you don't calculate in the opportunity, especially the opportunity costs, but the overhead costs are big.
Good. So that's the why is important. And then what would you say from your vantage point, why is this an Achilles heel in our industry? Like what do you think is the reason that a lot of remodeling companies do struggle with this?
Part of it I think is process, just not having a good one. Part of it I think too is there's in my conversations with guys at the Builders Association and even some of my project managers in the past, it's a philosophy of what's impossible, right? There's too many variables. It's too hard. Something always goes wrong. What's the point? It's just going to change anyway. And so it leads to a lack of planning because philosophically they feel like there isn't value in it. I deal with that. Every new project manager I hire, right around month 2 or 3, we start having that conversation because that's when it becomes evident that, that's part of their belief system is, well, he said sometime Thursday and we'll figure it out. He'll call me Thursday and we'll figure out a time. And that's not our approach. It's no, he tells you a time right now and he's there at that time, or he calls you and tells you why he won't be there at that time.
Yeah. And really elevating the expectation level.
Yeah. Yeah. So probably those two things, the process and just the philosophy behind can it be done or not?
Yeah. And I've been catching people, and maybe I need to catch myself with this sometimes lately too, but I've been catching people a lot more lately of going, I did it yesterday. It was not related to scheduling, but I said, well, stop it. It was related to a big project that one of my clients needs to go through the estimating and design development with. They've been behind on it. And she was like, all right, I'm setting this as a new goal. And she had already in her head kind of come to the conclusion she's probably not going to hit that date. And I said, time out. You're already defeated before you've even tried. I mean, we've got to keep the confidence up and the hope up that we can do this. And that's where you're struggling there. well, by the time I get done with the schedule, it's already changed. Something's always going to go wrong. This is
Yeah.
going to happen. What's the point of it? And that just makes something that's already hard, scheduling a remodeling project amongst other remodeling projects, it makes it even more difficult when we're kind of apathetic towards it and when we're kind of lackadaisical about it. So I like both those reasons. One, process, and two, you've got to have the confidence that we can wrangle this and we can improve it. But let's really focus in on the process part. So we hit on both of us kind of shared, why is this so important? Why is this a struggle? Now I want to get into more of the best practices. So for you and with your experience with project scheduling, talk to me about that process. Talk to me about some of these best practices. Let's give them let's give our listeners some golden nuggets, Paul.
Sure. I will say, just to top off what you said, it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle when, like, some of those things you were saying, like no process, bad planning leads to failure of planning. And so then you say, oh, no, it just can't be done properly. And then the effort's not there. An important process one is, you've said this before, if they're simple things, schedule the next meeting before the end of your current meeting. Those are some process things that need to get done. Every time you're talking to someone, don't accept, oh yeah, I'll get back with you later, and we'll figure that out. Subs are great at this. Well, yeah, I'll call you later and tell you when I can come out. Well, man, pause here. How about you tell me right now? You can change later if you want, but how about right now you give me a date and time? That helps a ton process-wise for us. You have permission. You have my permission to change it. If you get home and you look over your calendar and you say, oops, I can't, that's fine. But lock them in on a date on that initial call.
And how far in advance are you doing that?
So we're asking subs in the bid process. So it gets, the closer you get, the more refined it gets. So when we bid, we tell them, we're doing this project mid-April 2024. Earmark a week on your schedule for us. And that's, 7 months before we're doing the project. When we sign the final contract, we say we're doing tile work on this project from April 17th to April 24th. Earmark that on your calendar. Those are the dates you're doing that tile work for us. Then when we do a pre-construction meeting, which is generally 3 or 4 weeks before the project starts, we're calling them to say, I'm just confirming April 17th to April 24th. Those are still our dates. And then from there, it's 3 weeks before, 2 weeks before, 1 week before. It's pretty constant, regular communication, confirming and reconfirming, or potentially adjusting. Hey, demo took 3 days instead of 2, man. I got to push you back to the 18th instead of 17th. Yeah, it's just that daily work that gets.
So right there is something that I think all of us need to hear of. When it's 7 months out, it seems kind of pie in the sky, but you have trained your subs to realize, okay, McManus, they take their scheduling seriously. They're thinking through this. So we get a little bit of a far schedule, and then the contract is signed. It's becoming a little more clear. It's a little less fuzzy, but it's still several or many months out there. All right, so they've got that out there. Pre-construction 3 to 4 weeks in advance, whether they're coming out to see the project on a bigger one where they're main trade, or whether you're doing the pre-construction and you're just making sure things are, that's 3 or 4 weeks. We're confirming 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week, couple days, day of. That is a lot of work. That's a lot of setting reminders. That's the combination probably of some emails, of some texts, of some phone calls. And there's some trade partners that probably over the years have been like, screw that. That's not how we work. Well, guess what? They're not trade partners for you guys. And then there's other ones who you have trained to say, this is how we work. And yeah, you take good care of them. Everything is planned out really well. Projects go smoothly. You pay quickly, and they appreciate the organization. But man, there's a lot of checkpoints there that you guys are going through to ensure that the schedule, the best it can, stays on time.
Yeah. And it's more like in our trade, when we onboard subs, we have a trade partner meeting. And that's one of the things we go over is, hey, listen, when we say earmark that on our schedule, that's on your schedule. I don't want a phone call that, oh, a builder just called you and he needs a rush, tile install. Tough. Right. And we're very upfront about that. And then, yeah, we've lost subs because of it. Because they've called and said, man, this builder just called me. He's a good builder for me. Gives me a lot of work. I got to go do this. And I said, well, you can choose. You can go do that, or you can work for us. You cannot do both.
Hmm.
And yeah, then you whittle, you vet your subs that way, and it happens over time.
Yep. And over time, you start to find the ones that can work within your guys'
Yeah.
approach.
And
Cool.
it's not like we're inflexible, you
Right.
know what I mean? But we are we have to stick to schedule, and that's how you do it.
Okay.
And that's
What's
a
some
matter of
what's
fact.
what's some other best practices that are coming to mind for scheduling?
So a big one for us is another thing I see happen with scheduling is you just forget things. You're building a calendar and you forget, oh yeah, that needs to be done on that date. So we template our calendars, and everything that could possibly happen on a job is in that template. And then you import the template. And then instead of creating the calendar and trying to think through, hey, how is this going to work? You're just removing stuff you don't need.
Hmm.
And it really helps not miss steps in the process. And our templates happen to have to-dos and calendar schedule items on them. And it also saves a bunch of time. You're not recreating the wheel.
So you have these for kitchen, bath.
We just have kitchen, bath, and then we're
Okay.
able to import multiple calendars into a single schedule.
If needed.
We have a bunch. It's broken down a little more than that. We have a design calendar, then we have a pre-construction calendar, then we have a kitchen, a bath, and then we have a post-job follow-up calendar. And they all get imported at different times, and they get kind of combined into the big grand schedule. Yeah.
So that is of note to everybody listening to this, of going, one of the ways that we can really dial in our scheduling is to really strengthen and spend the time to create really solid templates. Whether you guys use Buildertrend, right, Paul?
We do, yeah.
Whether you're in Buildertrend, JobTread, Co-Construct, these scheduling tools that you have, every hour that you're spending really refining and improving your templates is hours and hours that you're going to save in the future. So and the way that you just laid that out, we have a design calendar. This is a little bit not exactly what we're talking about during this podcast, but that is an area that when remodelers make the connection of, I can treat my design and development phase the same way that I treat the production phase. It makes all the sense in the world for us to go through and create a schedule for production. Same principle on the design side. When are we going to have that first design done? When are we going to have the follow-up meeting? When are selections due? So just that's a little bit of an aside, or maybe we'll come back to it, but start thinking about your design and development process and really formalizing it with a calendar. Then you have your pre-construction one. Your pre-construction template probably has, how many different things are in your pre-construction template?
Oh, I don't know without looking, but I can look while
30,
while we're
40?
chatting. Maybe it's a lot.
Yeah.
The key is one reason on the design calendar, there is a to-do to import the pre-construction calendar, right? And that's so that we used to not have that. But then the project manager would forget to import the pre-construction calendar. And then guess what? There's no pre-construction process.
Yeah.
So they're linked in that way. And our project managers meet with designers 2 or 3 times during design to do scope of work review and calendar review. And so because we build the calendar and it's a template, like when we bid, our subs see that calendar. And when we bid, we say, hey, I've got 4 days for you to do this tile work on these dates. Part of the bid you tell me, is that enough time, too much time, or are those dates okay?
Yep.
And then they respond and say, oh, that I would probably need 5 days for. And we adjust our calendar in the bid phase to make sure it's accurate.
I can still just hear people going, I wish my trades would act like that. I wish my trades would respond back to me.
It's a relationship, yeah. So it takes time. They didn't all do that in the beginning, certainly. I've been through a lot of subs over the years, but eventually you find the ones who do. And that's our benchmark with all of our subs. I will, if you don't want to work the way I want you to work, I will tolerate you as long as I have to. And as soon as I can replace you with someone who will work the way I like to work, you're going to be gone.
And that's not being a dictator. It's so much of our process here and what you're describing here is around, yes, efficiency and productivity for our team, but it's also about the client experience. When we are dialed in with our scheduling, it makes the whole client experience so much smoother, less time it's taking, better communication of when people are showing up, when they're not showing up. So it's not just we're just trying to be as profitable as possible. Sure, that's part of it, but it's so much more than that from an efficiency and from a client experience standpoint.
Well, and like I said, we're upfront about it in the trade meeting, the onboarding meeting. I've had subs come in, I explain to them, and they go, "Well, what happens if I have a conflict come up on those dates I'm supposed to work for you?" And I was like, "You don't. Those are the dates you're going to." He said, "I can't do that. I got builders that." And I was like, "Okay, then we just don't work together. That's fine. You run your business how you want. I'm going to run mine how I want." So it is professional. Even when we have to talk to subs about it, when they're not meeting expectations, it's not you suck because you don't do this.
Right.
It's like, look, here, this is how we run our business. You don't have to run yours this way, but if we're going to work together, you kind of do.
Yeah. So the templates you see as a really, really huge key to scheduling going smoothly.
Yeah, I think especially when you're working with, you know, staff that have less experience, project managers that have been in the business 3 or 4 years, not 20, designers that have been designing 4 or 5 years, not 20,
because it reminds them of so many things they might not be thinking
you
about.
never forget it. And it's a platform for improvement. So when the project manager runs a job and he's like, "Man, I forgot to do this, and now we're kind of screwed because we already did this other thing, and it's going to be a lot harder now to do this previous thing." We'll go, "Okay, well, lesson learned, update the template."
Yep.
And then we don't make that mistake again.
Yeah.
So it's a
that phrase, folks, listen to this. That phrase, if that phrase is not being uttered a few times a month in your business, that is an opportunity when you set your New Year's resolutions for 2024 to work on that. That is a powerful phrase of, oh man, we screwed that up. What was the phrase again? I was making a New Year's joke.
A platform for improvement.
Yes, a platform for improvement of like, hey, that we messed that up. Let's go update the template. If those words are being said, it means that we're paying attention to the template, we're paying attention to the checklist, we're refining our process, and we're continually improving our process. It's when we are, quote unquote, so busy that we don't slow down to have the wherewithal to update our template, we're just going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again. But when we can fix that hole, when we can patch that hole, when we can make sure that every project thereafter is going to have that check mark that we need to do, that to-do list, the possibility of that happening gets greatly reduced than when we're trying to just remember it. And you mentioned, the templates are really helpful for newer team members that aren't really experiencing the industry. And you probably agree that templates are just as important, especially if they've been in the industry for 20 years. They've got all kinds of bad habits, right?
You're relearning a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think those templates are kind of critical. And the one thing I've learned over time, it is hard to rely only on your field staff or your designers to update those templates. So you can't put the whole burden on them.
Yeah.
There needs to be a supervisor. In this case, in my company, it'd be me. I keep a running list of those things. And then it's part of our staff meeting, a component of it is WIP review, not accounting work in progress, but actual work in progress, where we highlight things that could have been done better and notate what needs to be updated. And then we assign, the task of updating to somebody. But again, you need a process for that. In the past, I've tried to say, "Hey, project manager, when something goes wrong, you just need to update the template and fix it." That's a lot to put on a project manager who has other responsibilities. So you need a process for getting that template updated.
I like that.
Well, that's a little better. Yeah.
Cool. Hit me with some more things, sir. These have been great so far. What are some other best practices that come to mind?
So, and a lot of people are probably more familiar with this when you're building a calendar. I like to think of there's critical path items on that calendar. So we always highlight those. Those are things that will prevent the job from moving forward, right? Cabinet delivery is one of them for us, right? It's in red on our calendar. If we don't have cabinets, the project can't start. Inspections are critical path items. Every project's going to have different ones, and every company is going to think of critical path in a slightly different way. But you want to highlight those. And then a nice thing to do if you're using a project management software is to link items just for simplicity. Like we can't do countertop templating until all the cabinets are in. So if I move cabinets and those items are linked, they're going to move together. And that's a nice thing.
Yeah.
To do.
So hold on a couple of those things, especially during the year or so after COVID, where we were having a lot of delays with materials, et cetera. I would hear that a lot of going, "Oh, we didn't have the fixture in time. We didn't have the tile in time. We didn't have, maybe it was even the cabinetry, these critical path items." And after a while, I was kind of scratching my head going, time out, when did you sign this project? Well, 6 months ago we signed it. Okay, cool. What's the lead time on cabinets? Well, it's crazy. It's 16 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm like, hang on. I majored in finance, so I'm pretty good at this math stuff, but time out. Do you see why I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, what's going on? So even now that the supply chain has improved, it's still challenging in some facets. What we realize is, it was more the upfront design and development. It might have been our process. It might have been our, advanced ordering, and realizing, if this is going to start here, what are my critical path items that I really need to highlight to make sure are in place. And similar for the inspections. And then, we get a little nerdy when we start doing this, but man, when you have a schedule and you can link those items, and this updates and that automatically updates, we're using technology and we're using software to really streamline this vitally important area of your remodeling business.
Yeah.
It's good.
And the other common mistake I see with our project managers that they always need to learn is not looking far enough downstream, doing updates for the next 3 days or maybe even next week, but not looking all the way through the calendar to the end and updating it all the way through. And that sometimes bites, early in project management training, that always bites someone in the butt once or twice.
Yeah.
Until they learn you got to look 3, 4, 5, 6, the whole calendar, like at least once a week. We look at the whole, the SOP is, I'm not saying it always happens, but the SOP is, you look at the entire calendar and make sure it's still accurate.
Yeah. I think I've learned this from you over the years, or we've talked about it before. What you just described, what we've described with all of this is some time consuming work. I'd say, for a lot of remodelers, you probably know a lot of the best practices, but it takes a lot of effort to carve out the time for it. So, part of this is a little bit more big picture business strategy around, do you have the proper resources to do this well? And I remember you talking, two things I remember you saying, or one in particular. The other one I might be accrediting to you. But one was, we're always trying to keep our team members at fill in the blank capacity.
80%. Yeah.
80%. We're trying to keep our team members at 80% capacity. That's an interesting concept of a business strategy of going, I want my designer to be at 80% capacity, my project manager to be at 80% capacity. Most everybody's running beyond 100% capacity. And this idea of, okay, we need to give himself a little bit of room. And then the other thing that ties into this for me is, I see a lot of scheduling breakdowns because I have a project manager who is managing 8 projects.
Right. They don't have the time. Yeah.
Yep. And in order to look, just that one example, in order to take the time to look, really closely at the next 3 days, pretty closely at the next week, and then a little bit closely at the next 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, that just takes time and thought and quiet desk time. What's your hot take, or what would your feedback be for people that are like, look, my project manager's got 8 projects, and some of them are kind of wrapping up, some of them are starting. They should be able to handle that. Maybe even 9 projects. Does that feel a little heavy?
For us, it would be heavy. Like, our project managers can't run more than 4 effectively. 80% for us would be them running 3. So we always try to have every project manager running 3. They can run 4. So if a project runs late or a warranty issue comes up, they can certainly handle 4. For a very short period of time, they can do 5. But that's when things start to
slip,
break down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of keep it. But, we're on site every single day. We put a lot of effort into project management. I know a lot of builders and remodelers who don't. They're on site once or twice a week. So sure, then 8 or 9 projects maybe starts to make more sense. So it depends on how you're running your jobs.
So keep that in mind. It's going to be different a little bit for everybody. So you found, my sweet spot, if my project manager is really going to be active and really doing proactive scheduling work, proactive communication with the trades, all of this, 3 is the sweet spot for our average job size. Sometimes 4 or 5, it's going to be very difficult. And, for other companies, that number may ebb and flow a little bit. If you're doing, $300,000 projects that are taking a little bit longer, where you don't have to be on site every single day, perhaps you can get away with doing further. But what I typically see is we think we can manage 8 or 9 when we should be doing 6 or 7, or we're managing 6 when we should be doing 4. Keep that in mind. That's a business strategy thing. If you're sitting there going, why are so many little things falling through the cracks? Why aren't we following our checklist? Why aren't we proactive with this? take a good hard look at the capacity of your project manager and other team members. A lot of times those two things are going to be tied together.
Yeah. Well, and listen to them.
Hmm.
Just because you could do more doesn't mean they could do more. So listening to them
Yeah.
is important. Don't let them help. They can't be 100% drive it, but let them tell you what their capacity is.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
well. I've always made the mistake in the past of being like,
Yeah.
I could absolutely do 6 projects at once.
Yeah.
Why can't you?
I call
That doesn't
myself, what was it? What was it my son was doing the other day? He's a 17-year-old know-it-all. Of course, he's got
matter.
he's got the world by the tail. But I'm sitting here going, step aside, and I'm like, brrr. I think he was trying to research this, find this, copy and paste this into an email, like basically my superpower. And I'm like, dude, you've been doing this for 30 stinking minutes. Like, it took me 5. Come on, step up your game.
Yeah.
And part of it is like, well, he doesn't have the experience doing it. And I've done it 1,000 times, similar to what you're saying. You see that a lot on the estimating side of people being very optimistic estimators. Well, in my prime in 1998, I would have been able to frame that out and fill in the blank. That is a great way to have slippage on your projects and your gross profits getting eaten into.
And
So
be very frustrated in general.
Yeah.
And just,
Exactly. So on our estimating, we're like that. But what you just talked about on the project management, yes, you do know how to run. You could run 5 or 6 projects, plus do this, plus make dinner, plus this. But not everybody is going to be as talented as some of us. And everybody has, pardon?
Yeah. You got to be realistic.
Yeah.
And the 80% rule applies to your schedule too. Your schedule should be 80% full, more or less. There should be days when very little is happening. We have a rule: no 2 subs cannot be on site at the same time. I'm not having my plumber and my electrician on site together. Or if I don't want my flooring guy there and then the trim guy's coming right behind him because he told me he'll finish at 11 and the next guy's going to come in at 1, and that's going to work perfectly. No, have the flooring guy do his thing one day and then a trim guy does his thing the next day. Yes, it makes our schedules longer, but they're also more accurate. We're not behind because we have this built-in fluff. And if something does go wrong, we can always call the trim guy and say, hey, this is going to be challenging, but can you get there at 1 and work around the flooring guy and trim around him? We got to get back on schedule.
Sure. That might be a little more exception versus the norm.
Right. And you can put the effort into the communication and assistance to make that happen occasionally.
Yeah.
To keep on schedule. But build the fluff in. You know what I mean? We don't like working a lot on Fridays. So I'm always telling my project manager, just schedule. Don't start a new thing on Friday. Right? If it's day 1 of cabinet install, don't do it Friday. Just schedule it for Monday. You're right. And then make your Fridays more about planning for the next week, and so they're a little more chill. And those little kinds of things can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I like that. Well, Paul, I ordered Jimmy John's before we started this conversation, so I have a lovely little sub to nourish me, and they also just added bow tie pasta as a side. I had it one other time; it was quite delicious. So that is sitting for me right outside that door there. So, in other words, I'm hungry, and we're going to wrap this thing up.
All right.
Let's not be too crazy, but if we were to wrap a little bow on this, so if this was a Zoom call and there was everybody listening to this and we said, hey, what are some of your takeaways? I think we would have a lot of people talking about templates, talking about the need to look at capacity, talking about critical path items, reminding themselves of, I got to watch my attitude when it comes to just scheduling in general. I need to be much more optimistic and upbeat about it. I need to think through some of these best practices of my trade partners, and I either need to find some new trade partners or start to train them more in alignment with where I need them. So all kinds of takeaways. If you were to wrap up the conversation with, hey, if you heard nothing else, here's kind of what I'd really emphasize for you on this topic, or if you had one other little golden nugget to share that we didn't get to, how would you like to close this, sir?
I've got one nugget that we didn't cover that I think is important. We talked about how time consuming this can be. But the thing is, it's not time consuming if it's a daily practice, right? And this is what I always tell my staff, my project manager especially. If you're looking at the calendar every single morning and every single afternoon for 20 or 30 minutes and you miss a day or two, it's no big deal. If you only look at your calendar once a week, it's a huge amount of work, and it's a real big deal if you miss it. So breaking this down into a very simple daily practice. So every morning from 7:30 to 8, that's what our project managers do. And every afternoon from 3:30 to 4, that's what our project managers do. And they're bookmarking their day like that. And then it doesn't matter if you miss 1 or 2 days, as long as you're consistent, as long as you're hitting 80%.
Yeah.
That rule kind of makes,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, that's really good. I was talking to an employee of one of my clients the other day, and we were talking about bookkeeping, and she's just been in a habit. She got away from kind of the day in and day out bookkeeping best practices, and has kind of started to do it once a week. And this thing she does like once a month.
Mhm.
And we had just gotten back to that of going, as we were talking about why she was behind and why she was pretty frustrated by it. She realized it's because she was, instead of just doing day in and day out and keeping on top of it, she was waiting and waiting. Then things got more fuzzy. Then this wasn't in place. And I love that example because scheduling can be very much like that. If we're touching on it, if we're maintaining it, if we're adjusting it day in and day out, even if we miss a day, this is much more manageable. So focusing the time on that, prioritizing the time, that was excellent. Cool. If you guys want to check out and reach out to Paul, if you go to McManus, what is it? What's your URL?
Oh, McManusKitchenandBath.com.
McManusKitchenandBath.com. You could call him. You could send him a gift card, to a nice restaurant down there in the armpit of Florida. I'm sorry, the elbow of Florida, Tallahassee. He's sipping on coffee or tea right now. I bet you'd like that. That would be a nice way to say thank you, Paul, for continually sharing your wisdom. And I do appreciate you sharing your wisdom on today's show, Paul.
Thanks, Kyle. It was always fun.
Catch you next time.
See you, man.